I walked into my house to find Camille, my mom's girlfriend, smiling like she'd just won $1 million. And maybe she had in a twisted way. "Look at this," she said, holding up a piece of paper like it was a trophy. "We're finally making it official." My heart sank. "What's that?" I asked, already sensing I wasn't going to like the answer. "Oh, just a little something that's going to make things a lot easier around here," Camille purred, her voice dripping with sweetness that made me want to gag. "I'm moving in. Permanently." I blinked. Hard. "What the hell are you talking about?" Mom, sitting next to Camille, wouldn't meet my eyes. She was shifting in her seat, looking like she wanted to vanish into the couch. I'd seen that look before. It was the look she wore whenever she was hiding something. Something big. "Mom," I asked, but my voice cracked halfway through her name. "Mom, what is she talking about?" "Camille and we've been talking," Mom finally said, her voice hesitant. "We think it's time for a change." I felt the blood drain from my face. My mind was racing. This wasn't happening. Not like this. Not in my house. "This is my house," I said, my voice too calm, too controlled. I was trying to make sense of what was going on, but I couldn't. Camille smirked and stood up, tossing the paper in my direction. "Well, actually, sweetie, it's now ours," she said, way too casually. "We've already started the process to transfer the deed. You've been too busy to notice, but your mom signed everything. It's legally binding." I couldn't breathe. It felt like the room was closing in on me. "No," I whispered. "No, she didn't." "You're lying." "Oh, I'm not," Camille said, taking slow, deliberate steps toward me. "The papers are filed, sweetheart. It's done. Your mom agreed to it. And now, we're going to make this house ours. Together." I wanted to scream, but I was frozen. My mind was too busy trying to process the words, trying to piece together the parts of this nightmare. My home, the one place I thought I had control over, was slipping out of my hands. "Why?" I finally managed to choke out. "Why would you do this?" "Because," Camille's smile was too wide now. "I've been patient. I've played the role. And now, it's time to take what's mine." Before I could respond, my mom stood up, barely looking at me. I didn't mean for this to happen," she said, her voice cracking. "But it's too late now. Camille's right. She has every right." I looked at my mom, at the woman I had spent my life with, and I didn't know who she was anymore. My stomach twisted. The betrayal stung like 1,000 bees. "Mom, you're letting her do this?" But she just shook her head and walked out the door, leaving me alone with Camille, whose smug expression never faltered. I was shaking with rage, my hands clenched in a fist at my sides. I was on the verge of losing everything. My home, my memories, my safety, and all because Camille had decided she wanted it. "You're not getting away with this," I spat, but Camille just laughed, the sound hollow and sharp. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "You really think you can stop me?" That was when I knew it wasn't just about the house anymore. Camille wasn't just trying to take something from me. She was trying to destroy everything I held dear. And I had to stop her, no matter what it took. But little did I know, she wasn't the only one with secrets. I spent the next few days in a haze, unable to shake the images of that damn piece of paper and Camille's cold, triumphant grin. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see her standing there, laying out the terms of her plan like it was some trivial business deal. But this wasn't business. This was my life. My house had been in my family for years. It wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. It was my home, my memories, my dad's voice echoing through the rooms. Losing it wasn't just losing property. It felt like losing a part of myself. I tried to talk to my mom, tried to get her to understand how much this was tearing me apart, but she wouldn't listen. Every conversation ended the same way, with her apologizing and then siding with Camille. I felt like I was talking to a stranger, not the woman who had raised me, not the woman who'd always been my anchor. On the 3rd day, I decided to look into the deed myself. I went to the county office, spent hours going through old paperwork, looking for some sign of mistake, a loophole, anything that could prove I still had a claim to the house. The file on the property was thick, filled with documents I didn't understand. But the one thing that stood out to me was the transfer of ownership. It was real. Camille and my mom had signed it. I was furious, but at the same time, something felt off. There had to be a way out of this. I wasn't going to let her just waltz in and take everything from me. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like Camille had planned this from the very beginning. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about the house. It was about control. Camille had always been the type to want control over everything. Her smile, that manipulative grin, had never been about kindness. It had always been about power. But as I stood in the courthouse, holding those papers in my hands, a new thought hit me. What if I was wrong? What if my mom really did agree to all this, and I was the one who had misunderstood everything? I hated that thought, but it kept creeping in. Was I being irrational? I had to confront her again. I couldn't let this go without a fight, even if that meant risking everything. When I walked into the house that evening, my mom was already there, sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of wine in her hand. Camille wasn't around, but I wasn't about to let that stop me. "Mom," I said, my voice strained. "We need to talk. Now." She didn't even look up at first, just took another sip from her glass. "About what?" "This. The house. You can't just hand it over to Camille like this. You can't let her take everything away from me." She sighed, as if the conversation was exhausting her. "I've already explained this, honey. It's done. The paperwork is signed, and we're moving forward." I felt a flash of heat in my chest. "But you don't even understand what you're giving up. This is my home, Mom. This is my life. You can't just decide to hand it over to someone else. Camille is part of my life now. You need to accept that," she said softly, but there was something cold in her voice. I hated that coldness. It felt like a wall between us when I didn't know how to break down. "No, I don't need to accept it," I snapped. "You've been brainwashed by her. I don't know what she's done to you, but this isn't you. I need you to wake up and see what she's doing." Her expression shifted, just for a second, but I caught it. Her eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite read. Guilt? Fear? Whatever it was enough to make me pause. "I've made my decision," she said quietly. "You don't have to agree with it, but this is happening. I want you to respect that." I took a deep breath, my frustration boiling over. Respect it? How am I supposed to respect the woman who's trying to steal my house? The woman who's taking everything from me? How am I supposed to respect that, Mom? "I'm not stealing anything," she said, her voice suddenly sharp. "This is what's best for both of us. For the family." The words felt like a slap. For the family. How was this for the family? I didn't understand. I wanted to scream, but I knew it wouldn't do any good. I could feel the walls between us thickening with every word, and I was powerless to stop it. But I couldn't let this go. I couldn't just walk away and let Camille get away with it. There had to be a way to fight back. Maybe I didn't have the house's deed in my hands anymore, but I still had one thing left: my fight. The next day, I reached out to a lawyer someone my dad had known years ago. A quiet, no-nonsense type of guy who didn't take anyone's crap. I didn't expect much, but he could at least give me some direction. His office was small and smelled like old leather and coffee, the kind of place that didn't try to impress you with anything flashy. After explaining everything, he looked at me, his eyes narrowing. "So your mom and her girlfriend have the deed now, and you think they've pulled a fast one?" I nodded. "That's exactly what I think." He sat back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. "You're going to have a hard time proving anything. They've gone through the legal process. It's all above board, as far as I can see." I swallowed hard. "So, there's nothing I can do?" The lawyer's eyes softened. "Not necessarily. If there's any fraud involved, if the paperwork was signed under duress or misrepresentation, then we have a case. But you'll need evidence." "Evidence of what?" I asked, frustration creeping back in. What could I possibly have to prove that? He leaned forward, his voice low. "If you think Camille has been manipulating your mom, I would start by looking into her past. People like her, people who thrive on control, they don't do it for free. They usually have something to hide." I left the lawyer's office feeling both relieved and more terrified than I'd ever been. There was a chance, a slim one, that I could win, but it would take time. Time I didn't have. And I didn't have the luxury of just waiting around. That night, I started digging into Camille's past. I didn't know where to begin, but I had to try. I spent hours searching through social media profiles, old public records, anything I could get my hands on. What I found shocked me. Camille had been in and out of relationships, each one ending badly. That wasn't the surprising part. People go through bad breakups all the time. But what I didn't expect was the pattern. In every relationship, Camille had tried to take control. She'd moved in quickly, established dominance. And then, when things started to unravel, she moved on to her next target. I found one post, buried deep, from an ex-partner who described how Camille had manipulated them into giving up their home. The words were vague, but the context was chilling. Was Camille doing the same thing to my mom? The more I dug, the more I began to see the pattern. Camille was after more than just the house. She was after my mom's entire life, her security, her control, and the only way to stop it was to prove it. But I had no idea how far Camille would go to make sure she got what she wanted. The next few days felt like a blur of frantic searching, failed attempts to get my mom to see reason, and more than one sleepless night spent trying to piece together the puzzle of Camille's past. I kept digging, obsessing over every little detail, but the more I uncovered, the more it felt like I was sinking deeper into a hole I didn't know how to get out of. It was Saturday when I got the call. I had just gotten back from the courthouse, another frustrating trip to follow up on Camille's fraudulent transfer, and was sitting in my car, staring blankly at the steering wheel. The weight of everything pressing down on me made it hard to think clearly. The house wasn't mine anymore. Camille had somehow managed to get my mom on her side, and no matter how much I argued or pleaded, I couldn't change their minds. Then my phone rang. It was a private number, which immediately set off alarm bells in my head. Who would be calling me from a blocked number? Hesitating for a second, I answered it. Hello. A low voice came through the receiver, rough and unfamiliar. Is this Sam? Yeah, who is this? The voice hesitated. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm someone from Camille's past, and I think you need to know what's going on. I've been following your situation for a while now. I sat up straight in my seat, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. Who are you? I demanded. My name's Emily, she said, and I was with Camille for about a year before she left me. But that's not why I'm calling. I had no idea what this person wanted or how they knew about my situation, but I had to listen. If Camille had connections in her past, maybe they knew something I didn't. What's going on? I asked, my voice tight with impatience. I know what she's doing to you and your mom. She's done it before, and the pattern is pretty damn obvious. My pulse quickened. What do you mean, done it before? Camille has this way of getting into people's lives, especially women's lives, and taking control. First, she starts out by being all sweet, nice, whatever. Then she isolates them from everyone around them, starts manipulating them. And once she's done that, she takes what she wants. Your mom isn't the first one she's done this to. I felt a surge of rage. So, what are you saying? She's been doing this her whole life. Emily's voice grew quieter, like she was afraid someone might overhear her. She did it to me. She did it to several other women I know. I'm not the only one. And now she's doing it to your mom. She's using her to take over everything you have. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. This was it. This was the break I needed. But I was also scared. I didn't know what Camille was capable of, and now I had someone else telling me how dangerous she could be. Why are you telling me this? I asked, still cautious. What do you want from me? I don't want anything, Emily said quickly. But I can help you. I have information on Camille, stuff she doesn't want you to know. I've been gathering it for a while now. You need proof, and I've got it. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. This was too much. I didn't know if I could trust this woman, Emily, or if she had some agenda of her own. But I had no choice. I was desperate. I'm listening, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Emily explained that Camille had a pattern. She would get involved with someone, take control, and then use their connections and assets to get what she wanted. Once she had what she needed, she'd leave, often leaving the other person with nothing. She had done it to Emily, and now, according to Emily, she was doing it to my mom. She's going to drain your mom's savings. She's already got her to sign over the house, Emily said. And once she has that, she'll move on to the next person. I don't know if your mom can see it, but Camille's done this enough times that it's second nature to her. I felt a cold lump form in my stomach. How do you know all this? I asked. Emily hesitated. Because I was in the middle of it. I was too blind to see it at first, but now I know exactly what she's doing. I don't want to see you go through what I went through. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I closed my eyes, trying to process the weight of everything she was telling me. Camille was more than just manipulative. She was a predator. She had honed this skill over years, preying on people who were vulnerable, breaking them down slowly until they were too far gone to fight back. But Emily's offer didn't feel like charity. It felt like a lifeline. If I could prove that Camille had been using these tactics all along, maybe I could get my mom to see the truth. Maybe I could finally stop this madness before Camille took everything from me. "How can I trust you?" I asked, trying to keep the skepticism from creeping into my voice. "I get it," Emily said. "I really do. But think about it. Why would I be calling you now when I could have stayed out of this entirely? I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm trying to stop her from hurting anyone else." I was silent for a moment, weighing my options. I could hang up and keep going on my own, but everything Emily had said made too much sense. This was my chance, and I couldn't afford to let it slip away. "All right," I said, my voice firm. "Tell me what I need to do." "Meet me tomorrow," she said. "I've got something that'll help you make your case." The next day, I met Emily in a small coffee shop on the edge of town. She was an average-looking woman, no standout features. But when she spoke, there was a certain intensity in her voice that made me listen closely. She handed me a folder as we sat down. Inside, there were photos of Camille with various people, from ex-partners to financial records, and even some legal documents. There were receipts showing payments for things I didn't fully understand, but the important thing was that it painted a picture of someone who was systematically taking what wasn't hers, using manipulation and lies to make it all happen. "Camille has been doing this for years," Emily said, pointing at the documents. "I've seen her do it to women in the past. She targets them, gains their trust, and then she goes for the big score. Your mom is just the latest victim." I ran my fingers over the papers, my mind racing. This was it. This was the smoking gun I needed to stop her. I felt a surge of adrenaline. If I could get my mom to see this evidence, maybe I could break through her defenses. Maybe, just maybe, I could stop Camille from tearing everything apart. But as I sat there, staring at the folder, a sickening thought crept into my mind. Was I too late? The days that followed felt like a race against time. I had the evidence. I had Emily's support, but my mom was still as entrenched as ever in her belief that Camille was the right choice for her life. It was maddening. Every time I tried to show her the truth, she dismissed it, even laughed it off, as if I were the one who was being unreasonable. The walls I had been fighting for weeks only seemed to grow taller with every word. I had tried to talk to Camille, too, but she was always one step ahead of me. Every time I approached her, she deflected, using her charm to make me feel like the crazy one, twisting the conversation in ways that left me exhausted and disoriented. She had perfected the art of gaslighting, and it was working, on my mom at least, but it wasn't working on me. I knew what I had to do. One afternoon, I took Emily's advice and went to see a therapist. I was starting to feel like I was losing myself in this mess, like I couldn't even trust my own instincts anymore. I sat in that sterile office, across from a woman I barely knew, but somehow it felt like the first step toward getting a grip on the chaos that was consuming my life. "I don't know if I'm just being paranoid," I told the therapist, my voice tight with frustration, "but it feels like I'm losing everything. My mom, my home, it's like I'm watching it all slip away, and no one believes me." The therapist nodded slowly, writing something down in her notebook. "It sounds like you're dealing with a lot of manipulation and gaslighting, which can be incredibly disorienting. It's not unusual to feel confused, especially when someone you care about is involved." I leaned forward, desperate for any kind of clarity. "But it's not just confusion. It's like she's trying to steal everything. My mom doesn't see it. She's blind to what's happening. And now I have this proof, but I don't know how to get her to listen." The therapist paused, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes people are so emotionally invested in a relationship that they can't see the red flags. It's hard to accept that someone they love could be manipulative. But you have to remember that the truth doesn't always win in these situations. People believe what they want to believe. I sat back, the weight of her words sinking in. I had thought that once I showed my mom the truth, she'd understand. But maybe it wasn't that simple. Camille had built such a solid narrative in my mom's mind that the truth wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed something that would break through the thick fog Camille had created. Later that evening, I found myself staring at the evidence Emily had given me. Photos, receipts, text messages, and records that all pointed to Camille's manipulation. I was still struggling with what my next move should be. I couldn't just go to my mom and show her these documents again. It wouldn't be enough. Camille had already managed to make her doubt me. What I needed was something bigger, something that would expose Camille for who she truly was. And then it hit me. I didn't just need to show my mom Camille's lies. I needed to show her what Camille had been hiding from her, what she'd been hiding from everyone. I called Emily. I know what we need to do. I'm going to confront Camille, but I need your help. What do you have in mind? Emily's voice was full of caution, but there was a hint of hope too. I'm going to get Camille to admit it, I said, a plan forming in my mind. I'm going to trap her. But I need you there. You have to be the one to make her crack. I know you've been through this before, and you know how to push her buttons. We have to make her show her true colors. The next morning, I set everything in motion. I made sure Camille was alone at the house, that my mom was out running errands. Then I called her, asking her if I could talk. She agreed, though her tone was dripping with thinly veiled sarcasm. When I arrived, Camille was sitting in the living room, looking relaxed as if there was nothing at all amiss. The place smelled like lavender and stale perfume, a far cry from the home I remembered. The walls felt cold, impersonal. It wasn't my home anymore. So, what's this about? Camille asked, raising an eyebrow. You're still upset about the house? I told you it's not personal. Your mom wants what she wants. She's making decisions for her future, and you need to accept that. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. I'm not here about the house. I'm here to find out the truth, Camille. Her smile didn't falter, but there was a flicker in her eyes. The truth about what, Sam? I've been looking into you, I said, keeping my voice steady. You've done this before, haven't you? You've taken control of other people's lives, manipulated them, used them until you were done. I'm not stupid. Camille laughed, but it was forced. What's your point? You're delusional, Sam. You can't possibly think you're the first person to figure me out. I could see it now. She was trying to make me feel small, like everything I had uncovered didn't matter. But it did matter, and I wasn't going to let her win. You've been doing this for years, I said, and I have proof. I know what you've done, and I'm not going to let you destroy my family the way you destroyed others. At that moment, the door opened, and Emily walked in. Camille froze, her eyes narrowing as she looked from me to Emily. It was clear she hadn't been expecting this. Emily, Camille said, her voice suddenly cold. What are you doing here? Emily didn't flinch. She walked right up to Camille, standing her ground. I'm here to make sure you don't get away with it again, Camille. Camille's expression flickered with something I hadn't seen before: fear. Just for a second. But it was enough. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're wasting your time, Camille said, her voice shaking slightly. She was losing control. I could see it now, the cracks in the façade. Emily didn't say anything, but she opened her phone and showed Camille a series of screenshots. Conversations, text messages, and photos that painted a picture of Camille's manipulations. You thought I wouldn't find out, didn't you? Emily said softly. But I did. I've been gathering this for a long time. And now I'm going to make sure it gets out there. The truth is coming out, Camille. For the first time, Camille didn't have an answer. She stared at the evidence, her lips trembling. You wouldn't dare. But she knew. She knew that Emily would. And for the first time, she didn't have the power. I could see it in her eyes. Camille was cornered, and she knew it. But she wasn't done yet. She still had tricks up her sleeve. The question was, how far would she go to maintain control? The silence in the room felt heavy, suffocating. Camille was standing in front of me and Emily, her lips pressed into a tight line, trying to maintain some semblance of control. But I could see it. The mask was slipping. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. We had her cornered. You don't get it, do you, Camille? I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It's over. You're not going to keep pulling this crap. I won't let you. Her eyes narrowed, the calculation clear in her gaze. You think you've won? You're just like everyone else, Sam. Always thinking you're one step ahead. But you don't know what you're dealing with. I've been doing this for too long. I know how to play the game. I shook my head, trying to ignore the knot of fear that was starting to tighten in my stomach. The game is over. We have everything we need to expose you. Emily, still standing next to me, stepped forward. She didn't need to say anything. The evidence in her hands was enough. But when she spoke, her voice was low, unwavering. I tried to tell you, Camille. I tried to give you a chance to change, but you didn't listen. Now you're going to pay for everything you've done. Camille's gaze flicked to the door, the desperation flickering across her face for just a split second. It was obvious that her mind was racing, weighing her options. Would she leave? Would she fight back? But she wasn't stupid. She knew that walking out wouldn't solve anything. She was trapped. She had no choice but to face what she had done. You don't understand, she said, her voice quieter now, almost pleading. I didn't mean for things to go this far. I cut her off, my anger rising again. No, you don't get to play the victim now, Camille. You've been using people for years. You've been lying, scheming, and manipulating everyone around you. You're not some misunderstood soul. You're a predator, and you're not getting away with it this time. She took a step back, almost as if the force of my words had physically pushed her. But then, something in her eyes hardened. The mask was back, and she was gearing up for a fight. You think I'm scared of you? She asked, her voice cool again. You think this is going to ruin me? I'm untouchable. I've already won. No one's going to believe you. Your mom won't believe you. And if you try to expose me, I'll make sure you regret it. You're nothing. I felt a cold wave of rage hit me. I could see her trying to regain control, but I wasn't backing down. You don't have anything left, Camille. You're finished. I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are. She started pacing, her breath quickening. You don't know who you're messing with. I have connections. I have people who will protect me. If you want to take me down, you'll have to go through them. And trust me, you won't survive. I watched her carefully, but I wasn't intimidated anymore. Her words were empty threats. She didn't have the power she once did. She was on the defensive now. You're already on your way down, Emily said softly, but with an edge of finality. Your lies are about to catch up with you. It's only a matter of time before everyone sees you for what you really are. For a moment, Camille stood still, her face a mask of fury and disbelief. Then, suddenly, she spun on her heel and stormed toward the door. My heart raced, and I took a step forward, half expecting her to bolt. But she didn't leave. Instead, she turned back to face me, her eyes dark with something dangerous. You really think you've won, don't you? She spat, her voice low and venomous. You've made a mistake. You've all made a mistake. Before I could respond, she stormed out of the house, leaving the door swinging wide behind her. It felt surreal. The tension that had held me in place for weeks had finally snapped. But instead of relief, there was just a gnawing feeling of uncertainty. I looked over at Emily, who gave me a small, almost sad smile. She's gone, Sam. You've done it. You stopped her. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to feel that same sense of triumph. But there was something in the pit of my stomach telling me this wasn't over. Camille had always been unpredictable. I knew that she wasn't just going to disappear. She wasn't done yet. Still, Emily was right about one thing. I had stopped her. For now. I had the evidence. I had the truth. And it was up to me to make sure everyone else saw it too. That night, I sat down with my mom. It wasn't easy. We had barely spoken about anything other than Camille in the past few weeks, and every time I tried to bring it up, she shut me down. But now, I had the truth on my side. Mom, I said, my voice trembling slightly, I need you to listen. This isn't about me trying to control your life. This is about what Camille has been doing to you and to others. I know you think she's just helping you, but she's not. She's using you, just like she's used everyone else. At first, my mom didn't respond. She just stared at me, as if unsure whether to believe what I was saying. But I wasn't going to let her brush this off. I showed her the evidence, everything that Emily and I had gathered. It wasn't just a collection of documents anymore. It was the undeniable truth of what Camille had done. The messages, the bank records, the photos, it was all right there. My mom's face paled as she looked at the papers, her eyes flicking from one page to the next. I had no idea, she whispered, her voice shaking. Sam, I didn't know. I didn't want to believe it. But she really did that to me? I nodded, my throat tightening. She used you, Mom, and she's done it to so many others. But we can stop her now. It's not too late. My mom sat back in her chair, her face a mixture of disbelief and guilt. I should have seen it. I should have known. I'm so sorry, Sam. The weight of everything that had happened seemed to hit her all at once. For a long time, we sat in silence, the enormity of the situation sinking in. My mom had been duped. She had been manipulated in ways I hadn't even fully understood until now. And it hurt. It hurt that she hadn't seen it before. But I knew she wasn't the only one. The next few weeks were a blur of legal battles and phone calls with lawyers. Camille didn't take her loss quietly. She threatened us, threatened to sue, to make my life miserable, to spread lies. But it didn't matter anymore. We had her. The evidence was irrefutable, and the truth was on our side. But as the dust began to settle, a deep sense of sadness lingered in my heart. I had won. We had stopped Camille, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a hollow, bittersweet triumph. The damage had already been done. My mom had lost so much, her trust, her sense of security, her peace of mind. And no matter what happened from here, I couldn't undo that. I could only move forward. I could only rebuild. And though Camille had been stopped, a part of me knew that people like her would always exist. But that didn't mean I had to let them win. The story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had the strength to fight back. And that, for now, was enough.